Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Good morning and I guess you guys don't know I've been gone because I have been uploading podcasts remotely, but good to be back here. I was just in Vegas and we'll talk about that today. But, first and foremost, welcome everyone and all the friends to the show. Thanks for tuning into the Max Schmarzo podcast. As always, I appreciate you all listening. And as always, let me give you my quick sales pitch. The Always an Athlete training team 7-day free trial is on there. If you want to join the team, feel free to do so. What is the training team, Max? Great question. It's 6 days a week. It's an ongoing training team. It's not an individual program. It's not a set period of time. It is ongoing. It's been going on for multiple years. I update the programming. We do upper body, we do lower body. Sometimes we sprint, sometimes we jump. Sometimes we do high volume bench press. Sometimes we do near max effort bench press and pull-ups and overhead press and lots of dumbbell lateral raises and all those fun things. So sounds like a program for you. Feel free to join. 7-day free trial. Give it a try. I was on the Train Heroic app. So welcome back, everyone. I just got back from Vegas, and boy, oh boy, is that a city, town, place to be. I'm not a huge fan of Vegas. Let's just kick that off right from the start. I don't like to party. I don't drink. I don't really gamble. It's like I've gambled before, but I just lose money. Like normally you're supposed to have some, what is it, like 48% success rate in blackjack. I think I've won money one time, and every other time I lose all my money. But not like in like a relative amount of time that's like, oh, I was up and then I was down. No, it's just I just lose money. I'm pretty sure the math is correct on this. I one time lost 20 straight hands of blackjack. Or combined, my friend and I did. And it's like mathematically difficult to do. So gambling's not my cup of tea. I was there for NBA Summer League, and what a wonderful experience. I got to go see AJ, who you guys probably know if you follow me. AJ is a good friend. He's who I train I train a couple other guys as well, obviously, but he's who you might have seen me train on social media. Played at UNI, 2-time Larry Bird Player of the Year. He's been on the podcast. You guys know who AJ is. I shouldn't even have to, introduce him, but he was there hooping. He had 14 points in 14 minutes. Absolutely the human flamethrower, the human heat wave. He's a torch of a shooter. So really cool to see him play. Go cheer him on, support him, and kind of get him all situated there. So we just got back from that. Obviously, they have more games this week playing for the Bucks. You guys want to go watch them, check them out, give them some love. But awesome to be there. Really cool to be a part of someone achieving and working towards something that they've always wanted to do. And they've always wanted to, reach a certain level at. And it's exciting to play a very small role in that. It's very fulfilling because he's like a little brother to me at this point. It's how often he's stayed at our house and kind of been a part of the family. So awesome to see. But aside from that, Vegas itself is just utter chaos. It is a stew of mixed ingredients, put it that way. I mean, I don't even know how people do it. I went to go get coffee at 7:30 a.m. Not very early, I guess, early enough. And my dad, who was there with me as well, had just gone early at 5:30. And he said the casino floor was completely packed as if it was still like 10 p.m. I went down there at 7:30. There were still some, leftovers playing, I guess, people's leftovers from last night. I remember going to get coffee, and I passed a group of women who were at the bar, and they're fully dressed in like dresses that you would wear out at night. And I was thinking, I checked my phone. I was like, what time is it? Did I misread something? Did I see 4:30? Because in Vegas, you don't know what time it is. You don't see the light of day anywhere. I don't know if I stumbled out of bed at the wrong time. I'm like, hey, it's 7:30. You all need to go to bed. But yeah, that's not a lifestyle for me. But one thing that is interesting to note is after being there for 3 days, it's the amount of, it's almost like it's not anxiety. It might be, I'm not sure what to call it. It's probably not the right word to describe it. I get anxious to do things, not like I do get anxious at times, yes, about certain things, but when I'm around a large group of people. I'm in Iowa. I don't have many people that live here. There are people that live here, but it's not like New York or Boston. And when you go by that many people all the time who don't know, like, I don't know, it's almost like real life Instagram, right? When you're on Instagram and you're on the Discover page, you don't know all those people. And there's just an infinite number of people being constantly thrown at you and an infinite number of kinds of people, and it's almost like when you're in Vegas or these big cities, you just pass by so many different people and so many people you've never seen before. And it gives you some weird, like, not anxiety, again, maybe not the right word, but like smallness. You're like, wow, so many people. There's so many people I don't know, and there's so many people who don't know who I am. It makes you feel very insignificant. I don't know if that's the point of Vegas, because then you try and be significant, because to feel more significant, you want to stand out amongst a crowd of where you feel insignificant. And again, maybe that is kind of like how social media works, where you have all these people you interact with, and it makes you feel kind of insignificant. So you try to make a post to create significance, and people see you. Maybe you go out in Vegas and you rent a Lamborghini and you go out in the town, you spend lots of money and you get whatever, blah, 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 bottle service at a table, because it makes you feel significant in a town where otherwise you feel insignificant because you see so many people you don't know. It's a weird feeling. Also, didn't help that I ate like one meal a day and just total uber amounts of cups of coffee, and was just high wired trying to get through days, because I went to go watch basketball a day, and I don't like to eat food when I watch the game. So I'll just go drink a bunch of coffee. You don't realize how much coffee you're drinking. Then you're just a disaster. You're just chaos ensues because you're just full of energy. No, nothing too wild. It was very fun. Went to bed early because that place makes me exhausted. But all in all, wonderful. Ran into some staff members on some teams there. Got to speak with them. Really cool. Great people down there with all the NBA teams, working with all the athletes. So all in all, wonderful experience. Just wanted to share that little update with you all. So you guys want to go check out AJ, again, playing for the Bucks, and he's playing tonight, which is Monday. It's playing tonight at 7 p.m. Central. Maybe that's right. 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Go check it out. Give it a go. And, let me go give him some love. He's a good friend of mine. And if you're a friend of the show, you can go show some support. Let's go check it out. So, I want to talk a little bit about movement. I want to talk a little bit about jumping and a little bit about plyometrics and soft surfaces and hard surfaces and all that kind of stuff. I'll keep it short. Well, not too short, but I'll keep it very actionable for y'all. So I made a post before I left to Vegas about hard surfaces and soft surfaces. And people enjoyed it. And there were a lot of questions around it about training. Should I train on a hard surface? Should I train on a soft surface? How soft of a surface should I train on? And moral of the story, if we just look at extremes, is a good way to understand what's going on. And then we can kind of narrow down to regions that we can work in. So, I guess the utmost soft surface I think people think of is like sand. And so it's so soft that the ground underneath you moves quite a bit. The amount of deformation when your foot plants on the ground and hits, the ground forms around the foot and moves before you can push off and move again. Now, a very easy example is when you look at someone on sand, like a sand volleyball player. When they jump, they have low momentum jumps, deep ranges of motion. They don't rely on like traditional elastic qualities that you see in other types of jumps. And the reason for this is because the ground shifts beneath you. And in order to develop a large enough impulse to jump high, you rely high on the time variable. Also, because you can't plant and stick, you're not leveraging some of the friction and the stability of the surface to utilize that as a means to store elastic energy and help you jump high. So, do I use sand? Personally, no. I find it to be too extreme of a soft surface. Also, I don't like how much it moves. Now, I've heard of doctors, and I think it's Dr. Serrano. I think it's correct if I've listened to him speak. He said one awesome thing about sand is to walk on it. Just because it does move so much, it mobilizes your feet and bones quite a bit within the foot, and it feels good, and it forces some of the stabilizing muscles to work. But to run, jump, and change direction in it probably isn't beneficial because it's beneficial for all the bone movement and the fact that it is extremely pliable. I don't know if pliable is the right word, but a lot of movement underneath the feet. That same reason why it's beneficial is the same reason why it's not good for certain things. Now, another extreme is you go to a hard surface like cement. A cement surface, or something which has basically zero give, is very tough because it's a hard surface. It doesn't move at all underneath you. There is no dissipation of forces underneath you. When you hit the ground, you are dealing with the ground, and it's not going to move underneath you. It's going to fire right back because, Newton and how that guy works. You apply force in the ground, it forces. I guess Newton didn't make force, but you get what I'm saying. When you apply force into the ground, it applies kind of force right back to you, which is why you jump up in the air, you deal with ground reaction forces, and so on and so forth. So hard surfaces are naturally hard. And because of that, they can increase the peak ground forces. Now, that isn't a bad thing. It's just a thing to be aware of, because when we play sport, often I deal with athletes who play on the court, and it's a harder surface. Now, really good courts are actually not as hard as cement. They have some good give. They're actually double layered in how they're built. You notice that when you step on a really good court, if you're underneath a light, you'll see it displace the light a little bit because the court actually has some give to it. Those courts are awesome. You get about 2 inches extra on your vert because they're really well made. They're springy. They feel good. They don't hurt your knees. No one likes to try and jump outside because they hurt your feet. It hurts your knees to jump. If it hurts your feet and knees to jump, it can hold you back. And that's actually one thing I want to mention about hard surface, extremely hard surfaces. So you have the higher peak forces, higher ground reaction forces. Now, that might be helpful at times because you're trying to build the capacity to handle those. But there is a study, I believe, about barefoot runners. I'm quoting this on the top of my head. I don't recall the study per se, but I believe this is how it went. So bear with me. Barefoot runners, they wanted to train being barefoot. And when they ran on hard surfaces from being barefoot, they had higher propensity to have certain bone fractures. The reason why is because they're barefoot, they remove the cushion of their shoe, they're interacting with a very hard surface, and they just hadn't built the capacity to handle those hard surfaces under the load that they were applying to the body. Same thing applies to plyometrics. It's just very demanding, physically demanding, takes a toll on you. And so if you're going to go to a hard surface, you need to think about that as a stimulus in of its own. So don't just apply the same sets and reps. With that in mind as well, you can build the capacity to handle more jumps on a hard surface. But one of the things about a hard surface I've noticed is the fact, for me at least, it hurts my feet if I haven't done it much. I haven't jumped outside or ran or done stuff like that. It hurts my ankles and my knees. And so I actually limit myself at times with my jumping because I will inhibit myself when I run and I jump. I go, oh, I don't really want to try to come in at this high velocity because my knees really hurt when I do this. So I'm going to kind of baby it a little bit. So I do find a really hard surface at times to be self-limiting in the sense you're avoiding certain aches and pains that are associated with it. So those are the two extremes. Now we'll talk about grass. We'll talk about less, hard surfaces like a rubber matting or maybe a gym floor, hard turf, or you have outdoor grass. Now, I like to use both of these surfaces, but you use them with something in mind. Realize the pros and cons. Now, the nice thing about a soft surface is I like to use that when I introduce new movements. Why? Because if a new movement is new movement, we're going to probably need to practice multiple sets and reps with that movement. So by nature, the volume is higher. If I'm doing a new movement, the goal of the movement is typically feel, coordination. Not necessarily the specific loading for that week or maybe a couple of weeks we're learning that movement. Again, so I'll do it on a softer surface. Why? It gives me a little more wiggle room in case we make mistakes. We can keep practicing them. Now, I also do like some types of higher intensity jumps on a soft surface, especially if we're doing them multiple times in a week. But with that in mind, I don't want to ignore a hard surface. I want to make sure we build the capacity to get onto the hard surface of, say, a court or a rubber mat. And so this is where we can use surfaces as a means of stimulus, but also a means of awareness. If we've only been doing soft surface work, I should not transition, in my opinion, totally to a hard surface with the same work the next week. We might do half and half next week. Maybe I'll do my higher intensity work on the grass, and then I introduce my lower intensity work back onto the hard surface, And then I flip flop them next week. I do my higher intensity work on the hard surface, my lower intensity work on the grass. And then I make it so I can have a means I can go back and forth from, but keeping my higher intensity work on the harder surface. Yes, you heard that right, on the harder surface. Why, you might ask? Because that's the surface they're actually going to play on, that relatively harder surface. And so then I actually want them to run and jump on that to build the sport specific capacity to handle that. Again, but it's about building sport specific capacity. So the surface you're on is the sport you play. The capacity is the ability to handle jumps, cuts, change of direction on that surface. And so we want to be able to make sure we handle those surfaces. Now, a thing I've noticed, or a thing I've talked about before, is that when we play a whole season, like a basketball season, we have to respect the fact that we've done a whole bunch of contacts on a hard surface. Now, Paul has mentioned this as well, Paul Fabritz, PJF Performance. It's like, look, do we really want to get away from working on a hard surface? We spent this whole season building the capacity to handle hard surface contacts, to then run away in the offseason to a soft surface. It's just going to force us to rebuild the capacity to handle ourselves on a hard surface. So do we want to keep some of that hard surface training around? Absolutely, in my opinion. I think it's very important to recognize, yeah, we might have some aches and pains from the season. That doesn't mean run away from the sport. It just means be aware of where those aches and pains are coming from and how we can use what we've built in season to actually maintain our readiness for next season. So think about that. Lastly, by the way, with soft surfaces, they are nice for throwing things. Like I've done kettlebell tosses in the sand before. You can jump into the sand. Like I said, Paul, I didn't say that, but Paul that has done that before. If you check his videos out, you can jump into a foam pit. If you have a foam pit laying around, those are all really useful. Now, I'm not a fan of trampolines. That's a different kind of surface. That's an elastic surface. That's not a soft surface. So a soft surface is a dissipative surface. A soft surface, when you land, that dissipates a contact. A hard surface does not dissipate a contact. A trampoline is an elastic surface, and that actually changes your motor program of how you move quite a bit. There's research on it that when you move and jump and run on a trampoline, you actually have a really long ground contact time. Makes sense because you hit the ground, you extend through the ground. What is elastic is the trampoline. And so your muscles actually take on, you become a very stiff movement pattern. If you've seen people run and jump on a trampoline, it's very stiff because they're not being elastic. The trampoline is being elastic. And it actually changes your motor pattern quite a bit. And you can notice this when you get off of a trampoline, your immediate steps when you interact with the ground are very odd. They're very different. Why? Because your central program of your brain's movement structure has adopted itself to a trampoline. Now, in my head, it's like, look, I'm adopting myself to a surface that doesn't actually exist in the sport I play. At the same time, this surface is excessively elastic. It's forcing me to get into specific qualities and very specific movement patterns, runs and jumps that aren't movement qualities I actually want to have. So it's actually, in my opinion, teaching contractions around certain areas to maybe not be properly contracted, excessive co-contraction, excessive agonist, antagonist contraction throughout the movement, versus actually teaching the muscles to relax and contract in a way that a harder surface might. Reason why? Because if you hit a trampoline, your joints want to remain co-contracted because they are not necessarily going to be going through the same length and change and range of motion as much as because they're relying quite a bit on your own momentum and your mass falling in the trampoline, and then a well-specific time propulsion phase with a longer co-contracted time, right? Think about when you hit the ground on a trampoline, you brace yourself when you hit the trampoline. You brace yourself, the trampoline goes down to that big stretched position, and then you explode upward. But that long stretch position is held for a decent amount of time. It's fairly long co-contraction relative to that of a quick ground contact when you jump, run, or sprint. So that's a different kind of surface. That's an elastic surface. It's not a soft surface, in my opinion. If you, by the way, don't have the option for a soft surface, you don't have the ability to dissipate your forces, you can also think about using band assistance. This is where you use a band to help reduce your body weight load. If we think the ground reaction forces are too high because our surface that we're dealing with is going to be hard, we can reduce our body mass as well. And that's with a band assistance. And again, that's a little bit different, but I think more similar to a means. I actually kind of maybe like that at times better than a soft surface because it at least teaches the mechanical impact and the pressure associated with the ground because you're interacting with the same kind of ground, but at a different body mass. Some things to think about, some things to consider. So I hope that makes sense. I appreciate y'all. We have some fun podcasts coming up here. If you guys have questions, you guys like these podcasts, you want to share them, feel free to do so. I hope you all enjoy these. As always, thank you so much. Thanks for being a friend of the show here. Take care. I appreciate y'all. Peace out, and thanks.